All right, let's see how this works. Oh, perfect. Works great. Yes, they have a speaker link, and he logged in. Um, so he should be on there right now. Okay, but he'll just be answering questions. So not.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I'm up to do anything else? You should. It's already started. Three of them for simple price. Nothing like a good bargain. Yeah, I think I heard that. Oh, Larry. Is it Larry?
Yeah, I'll look over. Yeah, Larry.
So he should be able to just unmute himself and speak and make sure that that was the issue we were having. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna. Okay. Just like that's gonna be beyond my knowledge base. You're totally good. It was beyond mine too. But we figured it out. Somebody's never stuck to it.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh.
Can you have him say something?
Hey, Larry, can you see if you can say anything and we can hear you? No. So. Hey, Larry, can you say anything?
See if I can find Michael.
Okay.
If you want to go ahead
Yeah.
and start with your
Let's get started. We only have 30 minutes. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a great lunch. My name is Amaya Simpson. I'm a project officer in the Tribal Clean Water section. And today, and Rihanna and I are going to be talking about climate change mitigation and adaptation projects that you can do under the 319 program, specifically under the lens of wildfire mitigation. Okay, so before we jump right into Wildfire, a little bit about the 319 program for some of you that may be a little unfamiliar. So, 319 funds provide funding to eligible tribal agencies to implement their non-point source programs. Some of these project components include financial assistance for education, training, technology transfer, demonstration projects, and regulatory programs. But they can also be used to implement your non-point source management program, whatever the tribe may have, and the strategies that you may have for that. Typically, tribes use a watershed approach for that, which is depicted in the graph in the right-hand corner. So tribes get a base amount of funding, and it ranges from 45,000 to $70,000, and this varies depending upon the size of your reservation. Okay, so a little bit about the wildfire funding program and eligibility for FY23. So 46 tribes received an additional $15,000 on top of the base allocation that I just mentioned. And these funds derived from the obligated fund from the state of California. So funds that were from the California's 319 non-point source program were then reallocated to tribes so they can get the additional funding to start a wildfire project of their choosing. So that's what a little bit about where the money came from. And the tribes are selected based on a wildfire hazards assessment. And this was from the Region 9 Data and Technology Center. So 26 of the tribes that were selected have experienced a wildfire event since 2018. And the other 20 tribes, had a wildfire score hazard assessment above 3.85 on a range of 5. So we wanted to make sure that tribes that were most likely to experience another wildfire event and or have already experienced a wildfire event were prioritized to get this funding. All right, so why is this project significant? So as many of you all know, this has been a project that tribes have demonstrated that they want to have received funding for, especially as climate change is increasing the risk of wildfire events and their impact as well. So research definitely supports this in that, as average temperatures increase, dry conditions persist, which leads to more frequent and prolonged fire events. And they can also have extreme fire behavior. So this will lead to just a lot of other worsenings, such as erosion and things like that, but also is demonstrated in the wildfire season ranging from 2020 to 2022. All right, and most importantly, how does this connect to your water quality, which is very important for the Clean Water Act, of course. So wildfire has significant impacts on water quality. Active burning can lead to ash and other nasty contaminants getting into the water streams, which can be really hard to filter out and will definitely impact drinking water and other water resources that you may use your streams for. But they also definitely destroy your ecosystems, which leads to increased erosion, which we'll hear a little bit about in the projects that were led for that. But they also, the lack of vegetation decreases the natural filtration systems on the reservation. So you don't have that natural barrier to prevent non-point source pollution. All right, and so what did tribes in FY23 do with this money? So the most common practice under the 319 was fuel management, and these were in three different categories with invasive species removal, native cultural plantings, and erosion mitigation. Some of the most common include blackberry, pampas grass, and tree of heaven, and some of the cultural plantings or native plantings that I saw were most common were cottonwood, willows, and acorns. But as you can see in this pie chart, there are a lot of other cool projects that you can think of. So some people did GIS mapping to see and create their own hazard mapping and see which parts of the reservation specifically are more at risk. And then what can you do to like, where do you want to put your fire station? Where do you want to have equipment? Related to that, some people bought trailers or other fire resistant buildings or things like that, so they can store their wildfire equipment. They shared stories of like they had wildfire equipment but weren't able to access it in the actual event. So that was pretty important. And also other things like updating your non-point source management program to reflect wildfire risk and other goals such as like erosion control. and also getting significant training. A lot of people got firefighter training and those certifications, which was really key for their program as well. Okay, so future outlook. What does this mean for your 319 program? So while funds were given to a select amount of tribes for FY23, these are all activities that you can implement into your work plans moving forward. So if you saw anything of interest today, and there's also a fact sheet which was passed around, and we have extras if you haven't received one. If this is something that is of interest to you, you can put it in your work plan. If there's something that you also may see that was in a wildfire and that you feel like will help you prevent wildfire and your water quality impacts, also be sure to talk to your project officer. We're always willing to learn and see what kind of things that you may purchase. There were all kinds of creative ideas that we saw in FY23. So if you have anything, definitely make sure you talk to your project officer to see if you can put that in your work plan. All right, and so let's see how a tribe has actually implemented these in real life perspective. So, Rihanna, happy to have you. Thank you. Oops, sorry.
Uh-oh. What happened? Okay, I think I figured it out. Sorry about that. Maheji. My name is Rihanna Jones. I'm with the Washoe Tribe Environmental Protection Department. I'm the director. I've been there for about 3 years as a director and another year as an environmental specialist. So I've learned a lot about EPA grant funding and programming and the amazing things that you can do with this money. So, as we all know, climate resiliency and adaptation is a big deal in Indian country. Up above is a map of our homelands. You can see the outer yellow line is the more extensive territory. And then inside there is a blue line showing what the government has said our traditional territory is. So Lake Tahoe is the center of our homelands. We also have the Pine Nut Range. In the map with the fire scars, you can see there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fires in the past few years. We get devastated by wildfire every year. There's usually 1, if not 2 fires in our territory, and we're losing our pine nut range, our pinyon pine nuts that have sustained us for thousands of years. So wildfire resiliency, climate resiliency has become a big issue for us, and we're boosting up our efforts to mitigate some of the causes of climate change. So some of our goals are post-fire restoration planting in the burned areas, stream bank stabilization, and climate resiliency planning. With the funds from 319 and other BIA BEAR funds that we've used as a match, we have, and private funding as well, we've had the opportunity to do more work than we would normally be able to do. The BIA BEAR funds are not enough to restore the amount of devastation that we've seen, so we need supplemental funds to help with that. So this year we were able to do aerial seeding, drill seeding, and seedling planting. We're doing sagebrush and pinyon pine. We've also started a native plant garden because nobody grows pinyon pine. And in our area with the nurseries, there's maybe 3 or 4 nurseries that provide restoration plants for post-fire. And so with the Caldor fire, the Tamarack fire, the Numbers fire, the Cutter Preacher fire, there's just not enough restoration plants to go around, and nobody grows pinyon pine. It's very difficult to grow, and it's probably one of our most important resources. So we started our own plant garden, and I don't have a slide for it, but one of the things we were able to do with PPG funds is to purchase a Conex box, an insulated Conex, or is it Conex? I'm always corrected on that. It's Conex. It's insulated to do some seed storage. So this year we've collected like 180,000 pinyon pine nuts, and we need to store them. We need to have a space that is safe from rodents, from heat, from freezing. So we were able to purchase this storage container that will help us maintain our resilience garden. We've also done some stream bank stabilization, as I mentioned, with all the wildfires. And here's a good picture showing just how sad it is. You can see all the cheatgrass. Those were all pinyon pines. That was a dense PJ forest, and now there's nothing left. I don't know if I necessarily say it was a healthy forest before, but now it's not a forest at all. So again, working ways, how do we create a healthy forest? What do we need to do to work with other agencies to protect not only our homelands, but our traditional territories outside of land that the tribe does not own as well. So when you're backed up to BLM land, it's like, hey, if you don't have a fire plan in conjunction with the Washoe tribe, then we're not protecting the whole landscape. We're just protecting plots of land, and that doesn't really make sense. So again, here's just another map of the fires where you can see how many fires we've had. And so all our pine nut hills look like that now, and there's nothing left. So again, replanting pinyon pine is a huge deal for us. Again, with some funding, we've been able to, funding from the NFF, been able to expand our resilience garden and purchase 6 more hoop houses to kind of boost up our efforts for growing. More fire maps. I didn't realize I had so many in here. This just really goes to show, you know, how focused we are on it. So again, the black area are fires that we've had in the past 20 years, I believe. The darker the area, the more times it's been burned over multiple times. So again, the soil there is decimated. Nothing is growing. We're having to really boost up our efforts. So here I mentioned before is some drill seeding. So they drill seeded some native and culturally significant plants. We'll also be doing aerial seeding with Nevada Division of Forestry. And these things are very expensive. You know, it's, I think, $30,000 to do aerial seeding. You have to get a helicopter and a helicopter pilot, and it has to be equipped to drop seeds from the sky. A little bit more information on our native plant nursery. So this was started, I want to say, in 2021. Pictured below is Alexandra Urza. She's from Rocky Mountain Research Station and UNR Extension Office. So as part of their research, some grad students' dissertation was to look at pinyon pine and how it grows best. There's no silviculture plan for pinyon pine, so we don't really know like what the best management practices are for pinyon pine. So this group of researchers was looking into it because it's huge in our area, and it's huge to the indigenous people in our area. We're the Washoe Tribe of California and Nevada. So a lot of Nevada is PJ, pinyon juniper forest, and there's 3 or 4 tribes in that area that use it, plus other tribes in Utah, New Mexico, other species of pinyon pine. So they donated 1,000 trees when they were done with their research to the Washoe Tribe, and we were able to plant those in the Pine Nut Hills on allotment lands under the BIA Bear Plan to see. This was kind of an experiment to see if they would grow. As some people may know, restoration success isn't always the best. You get about 20% success. So we still have some that are out there and living, and we're starting to collect data on what nurse plant they grow best under, what soil conditions, and then starting to, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, look at the mycorrhizae relationships with the soil and pinyon pine and see if there's any type of supplements we can add to the soil, inoculate the soil or the trees or the roots to give them a better chance at success. Post-fire mitigation, we have done some stream bank stabilization, and I think this is probably the most valuable aspect of what we were able to do with 319 funds. This allowed us to do, again, more work. There's not always enough money in the BIA Bear plans, so this allowed us to purchase more wattles and do more stabilization. The Pine Nut Hills are unpaved roads. That's where our allotment lands are. So a lot of people go out there, you know, they have their camp, they have their pine nut camp, they go collect firewood, they spend summers there. But all the roads are unmaintained, and it's basically checkerboarded between BLM land. So we do what we can. These wattles were installed to prevent runoff. There's several creeks and streams out there that were really heavily impacted by all the fires, and just sediment was flowing in them. The roads were getting washed out because there was nothing to stabilize the banks, no plants stabilizing or holding anything together anymore. And that, you know, comes back to our resilience garden as well, as why we're growing restoration plants, is to help stabilize those banks in addition to wattles, because those wattles won't last forever. Here's a map. This is our wattles installation. So again, this is in the burned area. I believe of the Numbers and Tamarack Scar.
And our staff we have here, Craig Christensen and Yancey Burt. They will be presenting as well on cultural fire and solid waste next. Going out and doing the work. They're the boots on the ground. They've been working really hard all year to install these wattles, to find locations that need stabilization. And again, using GIS to map some of these locations. I think a lot of tribes, or at least our department, hasn't always been the best at collecting data. And we kind of just went about things in a TEK. We know what works. We know what works for us, and we can see if it's successful. But as we try and expand some of our programs, get more funding, we need a little bit more support. Maybe from Western Science, maybe from GIS, just everything we can do to enhance and encourage people to consider us as a robust environmental agency that knows what they're doing, that are leaders at the forefront of fire restoration, cultural fire, and stream bank stabilization. So next is climate. A few years ago, we worked with Adaptation International to do a climate resiliency plan. And so that's what's depicted here in the middle. And this was kind of the first start or first step. I think climate resiliency and adaptation is such a big deal. It's difficult to know where to begin. So again, we're starting with fire resiliency, native planting, and you can see that on the far side there. Those are pinyon pines that we grew, and those are about a year old. So they grow very slowly. They're very tiny, and they have a very long taproot. And then below that picture, you can see where we planted them. So we went out and planted all 1,000 in the burned area. They have little cages around them to protect them from wild horses in our area, which love to eat everything. And they're biodegradable. So, if they blow away or we forget them, they should break down in 20 years. So again, the picture in the middle is an outtake from our climate adaptation plan. It was about 100 pages long, maybe, and this was kind of a guide for us what we need to think about, where we want to go, what we want to focus on. It's definitely water, and it's definitely fire resiliency. Because of our area, again, there's going to be more fires, and we're very lucky that we didn't have one last year or this year, but that could be because there's nothing left to burn. So again, we also have a climate resiliency magazine, which is a shortened version of our climate adaptation plan, kind of a more digestible document with a little bit less scientific data and numbers in there that we can share with our partners. But we just received additional funding from the BIA to do climate adaptation and hope to boost these efforts up in the near future. That's all I have. Anga Angawe, thank you for coming. And here's just a picture of some kids. Education outreach is really important. So we are having some kids do some work, water some sagebrush plants, and then give them experience to go out there and plant it and kind of be stewards of their own land. Thank you.
We do have a few questions online. Louisa asks, does the BIA Bauer plan come with funds for the tribe to do the work?
Yes. So the BIA BEAR plans, BEAR stands for Burned Area Emergency Response. It mostly pays for the work, but it does pay for some staff time. Again, it's not a lot of money, and we've reached out to other partners to kind of find a match so we can do more with those funds.
And then there was also another question. Someone asked, and I think this was a few slides back, they asked the fire near the water. One more. And Greg, please, in the chat, if you want to provide some more context on your question. I think it's the next slide over. One more.
We just want to know how close to the water.
Yeah.
Well, the streams out there run all through the pine nut lands. Some of them are ephemeral, some of them move quite a bit. So it's right in the thick of it. They burn straight through it, and there's still a few trees that didn't burn right on the edge of the stream, but it's very hilly, so everything is just running into the streams left and right.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Hello, everyone. I wanted to hop on and say hello.
Hi, great presentation. My name is Bria Hernandez, and I work for the Bishop Paiute tribe. So we've actually used funding from the 319 to promote our seed library, but which is awesome because then we can, we have seeds. But we just went to a seed collecting and a training where they talked about how after a certain time, a lot of the seeds aren't viable anymore. Is that something that I guess you had to, you have to deal with the pinyon pine?
Yes, it is. In my past life, I was a seed analyst for North Carolina State Department of Agriculture. So I learned a few tips and tricks about seed saving. One thing with pinyon pine, I think their seeds are viable for 2 years. If they're stored in perfect conditions, they may last a little bit longer, but we fully intend to plant out the 180,000 we got in our 6 new hoop houses that are almost being built. So again, we don't plan to have them around for more than 2 years. But that is something we'll probably look into as we get into seed sovereignty and seed saving. We're not quite there yet, but it's definitely on our radar. What's the maximum amount of time a seed is still viable, especially for pinyon pine?
Any other questions?
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I'm always available after the session and throughout the week as well if you have anything about wildfire and how you want to implement that in your 319 work plan. But also, of course, talk to your project officer if there are any unique projects that you think you can fund under this program. And also other 319 related things. I know we're trying to expand and see how other climate change, of course, water related projects can be implemented into your work plan. So always feel free to reach out.